Here are the reasons that I don't believe that people walked on the moon. Somewhere in the 90s, I went to Cape Kennedy in Florida, where they fired the missiles to go to the moon. And they have kind of a museum there, and they had a LEM, the LEM as you see here in the picture. And when I saw that thing, I said, what the hell? There's no way that thing can fly, You look at the picture and you see how this thing can fly. It doesn't even have the right shape to fly. It's like a ball with all kinds of things hanging on all over the place. Well, there is no atmosphere around the moon and in that area, but still, how do you control something like that to fly? And then I saw a movie somewhere where the thing was flying. Here you see a picture that I took from the movie when the lunar module flies up and goes and leaves the moon. It shows you how it just separates and it goes up, and you don't see any fire of a flame or something, nothing. It just goes up and that's it. And they can control it going left, right, and wherever they want to go with that thing. Just like a flying ball, And it was in the 1970s, 1971 or something. What is the date? Yeah, 1972, maybe. Yeah. They could do that stuff, fly anything around the moon and like no problem. And then I said, no way that thing gonna fly. It doesn't look like a rocket. And then it's so small. There is no fuel in there almost. Here you can see a picture of the lunar lander. And you can see there on the bottom it says all kinds of tanks. That thing that lands on the moon with the 4 legs. Okay, it has kind of a lot of big tanks in there. That's just for landing. Okay. Then when you look at the top part, that's the lunar module. That's the LEM, like they call it. That's where the astronauts sit in, and that's gonna fly back to leave the moon and get back in touch with the missile that's flying around. So these fuel tanks are even smaller than the thing that was sitting there with the 4 legs in the bottom picture. So how does it have enough power to fly? How can it fly when there is nothing there? I see helium, pressure module, helium tanks, fuel tank, the little round ball, that's it. And then oxidizer tank, and then the engine. That's it. Where is all the fuel? And that thing flies, but to land, you need more fuel, like a lot more. And then there is only one engine there. When you see Elon Musk landing his missile that he sends up in space, he brings it back and lands on a ship. He has like 3 or 4 motors with flames coming out, pushing left and right, and he has a hard time to land that thing. Imagine in 1969 they land that thing on the moon with no problems. Just boom, land and like nothing. And they did that how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 times. 6 times in a row, no problem. Elon Musk had to do it several times before he could do it, and now still fails once in a while. It's not so smart as the guys in the 60s, 69. They had better equipment then. So that was my main reason why I didn't believe that people landed on the moon. I didn't see this thing to be able to fly. And then when it leaves the moon, it has to go around the moon and find that missile to get connected together with it. How do they do that? he almost has no fuel anyway, but he flies around and they get back in touch with it, get connected, the astronauts climb out of it, and then they go back to Earth like no problem. Now, I was reading on the internet and it says that docking with the International Space Station is so insanely complicated, it's a wonder we ever get it right. Although a rocket can transport astronauts into space in less than 10 minutes, it takes hours and even days to rendezvous with the International Space Station. That's now in 2020, okay? I'm talking about 1969. They had no problem with it. It was like a piece of cake. Just leave the moon, fly around, get in, dock with the missile that's flying around there. No problemo. Not in 1969. It didn't take days to connect. So what's the truth, man? I don't know. I didn't believe that. They can just that little thing fly around and connect with that. You can't even see that thing. It's flying around. Where the hell is he? You have to go, oh, there he is. Let's go and get him, It's not that simple. But for them it seemed to be so simple. There was no problem. Then I was talking about that thing flying up again with not so much fuel. Now Apollo 17, I think it was the last one. It brought 250. They brought 253 pounds of rocks and soil from the moon. Imagine 253 pounds. That's a lot of rocks, and they all put that in that little thing. There is no space there. I don't know where they put all these rocks. Anyway, they did it and they fly away like no problems. Then another thing that I don't understand is, you see those guys walking on the moon with that backpack, That's all the oxygen, supposedly. They stay on the moon, they walk there for 7 hours, and then they have to go back inside and stay there for days with that little pack on their back. On Apollo 17, they stayed there for 75 hours. 75 hours, that's more than 3 days. And with that little pack on their back, it's enough to have oxygen for 3 days, 3 nights, 72 hours, 75 hours. Plus you still have to fly up and down. I don't know how they do that. I was reading about scuba divers. The tanks they have when they go diving in the sea. It says, based on personal experience, an average open water certified diver using a standard aluminum 80 cubic foot tank on a 40-foot dive will be able to stay down for 45 to 60 minutes before surfacing with a safe reservoir of air still in the tank. So they can last up to 1 hour in the water with a big tank on their back. But people on the moon, they have just a little square thing on their back and they last for 3 days. No problemo. Why can't you use a pack like that to scuba dive? You can stay for days in the sea and can sleep there on the bottom of the sea. And then those guys, how they eat? How do they eat? They have that mask on and everything. It's like not something like a face cover or something. It's a whole helmet and you cannot take it off because oxygen is in there. So I don't know how they eat. Because if they take it off to eat, then all the air is gone. I don't know. And how do they drink? They have to take off their mask. I don't know how they do that. But supposedly they figured it out. Then the toilet. Where do you go to the toilet? When you're walking around on the moon, They're walking around for 7 hours. I don't know, they take off his suit and do his stuff or something, or supposedly they have a system that takes care of it inside the spacesuit. I don't know. They're running around with their stuff for 3 or 4 days before they come back to Earth. And then how do they sleep? How do they sleep there? They stay there 3 days. So they're going to sleep 3 nights there. There is no room in that thing. Here, this is a picture of a cut through of the LEM where the astronauts supposedly stay inside it. There is no room to sleep there. That's just enough room to stand up. And then they say they have hammocks there where they can sleep. Where do you hang the hammock there? There is no room for hammocks. And then with that big spacesuit around them, how they can even get on the hammock? And then they sleep in that thing. How can I sleep with that spacesuit in the spacesuit for 3 days and then walk around next day 7 hours? Forget it, man. There's no way. Yeah, but for them it was no problem because they're trained, very, very highly trained. So yeah, they can do that. I don't think so. And then they had computers there, the computers that they had. The capacity was 2K of RAM and 36K of ROM. That's like I don't know. My calculator has 100 times, 1,000 times more power than their computer that they had there. Then that the missile that they used, what was that? The Saturn V rocket. You see how big that thing is? Most of it is like 95% of it is fuel, just to leave Earth. That's it. Now the gravity of the moon is 6 times less than the gravity on Earth. So I imagine you have to have 6 times smaller missiles to leave the moon. But what they have to leave the moon, there is nothing there. There's not even just a little tiny missile. That's it. That's all there is, and there is no even fuel there. But to leave Earth, you need a big, monstrous tank. How long is that thing? It's the size of 36-story buildings. A 36-story building. It's 111 meters high, and it has 5 engines. Those engines are big, very big. You can see the people standing next to the engines there, how big they are. And then way on the top, 111 meters farther, there is a little capsule with just enough space for 4 astronauts. And then they lift this thing up, They sit on top of that, and then they fire those 5 engines. It's like an explosion. Those guys, they pee in their pants probably when they sit on top of that thing and when they fire those engines. Whoa. And then that's just to leave Earth, the atmosphere. But to leave the moon with a little tiny tank, with a little tiny missile and a little gas tank, that's enough to leave the moon and fly around for a few times. No problem. I don't know how they did that, It's hard to believe. Even if these specialists come up with the explanation, I don't believe it. I don't know. I have a hard time to believe that. But anyway, most people believe it. I don't. I'm not going to believe that stuff. Unless I see it with my own eyes. I saw it. I was watching the TV when they were landing on the moon, and whoa, it's cool stuff. But when I saw that the module there, the replica in Cape Kennedy, I said, wow, no way. No way they can fly that thing. And then everything else, like what they eat, how they sleep there and everything. It's no way they can do that. It's not possible. And then to connect that thing, the lunar lander, connected back with the missile that's flying around, no problem. They just go, fly, boom, connect, and come back to Earth like nothing. Right now they need days to connect with that. Just here, leaving Earth a little bit, they're having a problem with it. It's the hardest part of it. No. I don't believe it. Now they still want to go to the moon, and they cannot do it. It's 2020, and they still have a hard time. They even have a hard time to land just a robot on the moon. Israel tried it a few months ago. They failed just to land a robot on the moon. India did it a few months ago, tried. It was a disaster. They couldn't do it. But in 1969, we can land people on the moon and come back with 200 pounds of rocks and no problem. Those guys were smart in those days. Now they're not so smart anymore, I guess. I don't know. Well, that's my thought. I may be wrong, I can be wrong. I'm not a scientist, but it doesn't make sense to me, all this stuff that they're telling us. You have to come up with a better story than that one. All right.